This is a biscuit saw. All right, so again, when I press inward, it will only come out just enough so that I can put a biscuit in to make sure that my project stays together. The reason why we need to use biscuits is since this is going to be a structure that we stand on, we don't want this edge seam to break and separate. So to add strength, we're going to put the biscuit in there like a mortise and tenon to add structure to this glue up. Does that make sense? All right? So once you've cut, and I know these aren't to scale, these are cut-offs, right? Once you've got your 4 pieces, right, what you're going to do is you're going to look at the end grain and focus on the growth rates. Now what we're going to talk about right now is bioengineering. I'm going to take these 2 pieces of wood that have a tendency to shift and shape, and I'm going to use those forces to fight against each other to create a stronger piece. So the way we glue up our edges is if the growth rings are coming up one direction, I want them going down another. So again, if the growth rings are coming up this way, I want it the opposite. So if this is going down, I want this going up. So you see how the U's are in opposite directions? This is universal for panel gluing, furniture construction, anything up into the advanced. We use this technique for every single piece. Now, the reason why I mention this is that if you do it this way, what's going to happen is it's going to warp into a beautiful U shape, and it's not going to be fun to glue that up. So again, we're going to take the forces of the wood and make it fight itself to hold that shape. So again, this is going to pull one way, and this is going to pull another way, thus canceling each other out. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So again, that's the property of a glue up. Now, for layout, you're going to need to mark 2 lines. So I'm just going to draw this real quick. One is coming up from the end grain, 1 3/4, and the other one at 4 1/2. Reason being is when I go to biscuit these edges, if they're not lined up and I go to put my 2 pieces together, they'll be off by how much I'm off. Does that make sense? So again, I give you numbers because it's easier instead of trying to trace like this against 2 pieces. You're going to measure up 1 3/4, mark a line, up 4 1/2, mark a line. The other piece should have the exact same thing. So when I put the opposite end grains, so they're opposite directions, when I put them together, these 2 lines should line up perfectly. Does that make sense? All right. Now, safety with the biscuit saw. All right. Because this saw comes out, right? When I go to start it up, I'm not going to have my hand on the body of the saw. What I'm going to do is I'm going to line this red line up here with the mark on my board. I'm going to depress the frame into that point. Then I'm going to take my hand. On the left-hand side is the power switch. Power it up. There's my biscuit. All right. It is very simple. The one thing I get a lot of people doing is, again, they'll take the body and they won't cut it correctly. So again, set up the frame first on your line. Once it's ready, you may power it up and then depress the saw in. Does that make sense? The other thing too is I don't want to do, the other thing is people will depress the body in and then power it on. So the blade is actually contacting the wood. So what's going to happen? It's going to fly in that direction. So again, don't grab the body of the saw, grab the frame. So my right hand is off this while I'm setting it. I can use it to tune that line, but once it's set, my right hand comes down, powers it on, and then I depress in. Does that make sense to everyone? All right. Now, for each side piece, you're going to need 2. So that's going to be how many cuts? 4 per side, right? Once that's set up, you're going to need 4 biscuits. They are already pre-made, right? And what you're gonna do is you're going to glue this up today, right? So when I'm gluing biscuits, right, I'm going to take a small bit of glue, I'm going to spread it across the surface. The excess that's on my finger, I'm going to put it on the biscuit. Press it into my piece, and then put the part together. Now, one thing I got to be careful of when I'm gluing is that I don't clamp it in offset like this. So again, I want it flush. So again, take the time to set this up. Once that's set, I-beam bar clamps are preferable, but if they're not available, you may use pipe clamps. Now the rule for clamping in this class is that whenever you go to get a clamp, they must be two of the same color. So again, these I-beam bar clamps are orange. Orange and black go together, red and black go together, and the same is true for pipe clamps. Reason being is the beams on these are all different sizes. So if I take a red and black and I combine it with an orange and black, it won't clamp it flat. Does that make sense to everyone? All right? So, move this tool out of the way. Open up my clamps. Need 4 of those, yes. Now one thing I like to do is I like to reset my clamps all the way out. And then flip them. Because again, in the smaller pieces, this handle is going to get in the way of the other. Does that make sense to everyone? All right. So, dry clamp it, bring it together. And I'm going to put downward pressure here with my hand as I'm tightening. Now, this is a good question I had in the other class. What if I still see a gap here? Is that not good to have? No. So the way we close them is with a hand screw, which you've covered in this class. How we operate hand screws is we're going to grab both sides and we're going to close it all the way. Right? So now both sides are perfectly parallel. For the first one you set up, this is an easy tip. You're going to count how many revolutions it takes to open, to fit over your workpiece and underneath the bar. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, roughly. All right, so I'm going to check. It slips over. All right, now I'm going to take both handles and I'm going to twist them in opposite directions. All right, so one's going to go forward, one's going to go back. Once I've squeezed it, there should be no light visible at all between this joint here. Now, let's just say there's light here, here, and here. There are 3 places. How many clamps am I going to need to get? 3 plus the other side, so 6 total, right? The reason why we're putting so much effort in this piece is this is the foundation of your entire project. If you don't take the time to make sure it's glued up nicely, you're going to have to spend extra time to correct it. Does that make sense? So again, if we get this perfectly flat, perfectly glued up, the amount of work we're going to have to do in addition to this is none. All right? Now, the same is true for your glue ups. So again, for your top step and your bottom step, you are allowed to go into any scrap pile at my office, in the wood room, in the exotic wood room. And you may collect pieces of wood that meet the requirements in the plan. So what I'm talking about is, if I'm making my top step, all right, so let's take a look at the top step. So stool foot step top, it should be in thickness greater than 7/8. It should be longer than 16 inches. Now, will it be exactly 10.5 inches wide, the piece that I'm grabbing? No. You are adding up to 10.5 and more, because again, I'm going to be gluing them on edge. So again, you might find a nice piece that's wide enough, right? But it might not meet the thickness requirements. So instead, we're going to turn them on edge and glue them together. Now, with that said, I had this happen last year and I kept it. That's a lot of work to correct. So again, what you can do is if you're edge gluing, you can rip these strips closer to 7/8 so you have to do less work. Does that make sense? So I had one that was like this when he started. All right? So again, you don't just take large pieces and glue them like this. You can rip them in half, and guess what? You get a second piece out of it. Oh my gosh. Mind blown.
Maybe even 3 pieces.
Yeah. So again, when it comes to the pattern or the design of your steps, you may use any wood that's in the scrap wood. Now again, woods like bloodwood or some forms of edamame, which are the really super dense and dark woods, I'm going to say no to. Because again, those are reserved for the highest levels. But again, if they fit your requirements and they're in the scrap pile in front of my office or in the wood room, you may have access to them for your project. Does that make sense? All right. Now again, just to refer this again, when I'm gluing up the panel, all right, I still want the grain to alternate in different directions because again, when I have a large board glued in opposite directions, the forces will fight itself to stay flat. So again, over the 50 to 75 years this project will last, it will hold its shape that entire time. If you don't follow that equation, yes, your project will create this beautiful U shape and it will fall apart. So again, we are getting into the part where we're starting to take the wood material, take what we know about wood's biology, and we're going to engineer our own lumber. All right? Now, if you get done with Biscut joining your sides and they are glued up, both of them, and you have your wood selected for your panel, come see me. I'm going to do planer training today as well. So again, that's if you've gotten your sides glued and you've got all your wood collected. With that said, if you have not finished your 5 wood joints and they have not been graded yet, please get them from me. With that said, get to work.